intros. Right, so Scotty, can you introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing, please?
Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm from Sydney. And I'm just sort of basically trying to pull together a bit of a small organisation to help those less fortunate possibly get to the stage where we can help some people with mental illness and different things like that. But at the moment, it's just really grassroots and sorting out sort of people like on the streets.
How did you get started?
I just went to the local charity shop, bought out all their blankets, jumpers, jeans, and whatever they had, sleeping bags. Went home, cooked a big bunch of chicken soup, and went out in the street by myself.
So, what was the moment when you kind of thought, "Oh, I'm going to actually go to the charity shop and I'm going to actually cook some food"? Was there some sort of trigger? Like, did something annoy you, or?
Not really. I've done, like, before that I did all sorts of stuff. So before that, I think a year before I started, or not even a year, but 6 months, because I started in May. I think that Christmas prior, I actually got because I had all these hats that I'd never wear from like rap battles and random stuff like that, and that I got as prizes, and just things like that I'd acquired that I'd probably never use. And I went to at that time, I think there was an Aboriginal tent embassy just near where the block used to be, because they shut down the block and then there was a tent embassy. So I went there and I gave them all some clothes and hats that the kids might be able to use for Christmas presents in the coming days. And then I got $100 and put it all into $5 notes and walked around, just tried to give $5 to any homeless person I saw.
Yeah.
Just trying to do something, you know what I mean? But I've always given, and I've always wanted to do stuff. Like, I think even before that, like, I did go to places where I could volunteer, but they always were very specific about times. You need to be here at X amount of time, and, you know, if you can't come and volunteer like 1 day a week or 2 days a week at this time, then don't bother, kind of thing. Because it was with youth and stuff, I think, that stuff. So they need to be they're reliant on people turning up, and they need people to mind kids. So I guess that's where it came about. I just wanted to do something, and I guess I could do it in my own time if I did it myself.
Yeah.
So
where are you at the moment then? That was all a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago, and then, I don't know, busy. I was doing it full time for a while, like every week or every second week at least, probably every week for one stage with my mate. And then he moved to Perth. And then it just got a bit more difficult to do by myself, but sort of kicked it back off. And that's why I sort of wanted to put this campaign together, because my whole thing is, I think a lot of people want to help, but not everybody's got the time to do it all the time, but everybody wants to help do something. So if I can build, and that's what I'm trying to do with this campaign, is to get a van on the road and get a storage shed and do those sorts of things. And then get a multi-insurance policy that will cover anybody that can drive it, those sorts of things. Then anybody can potentially go and get that van, go to the storage shed, unlock it, get the clothing, and go and do it themselves. So we'll reach more people, but also anybody who ever wants to help can go and do it. Set up, I've got someone that's already reached out and said they want to build a website for me and do all that sort of stuff. Set up a proper calendar where, you know, that sort of thing, and then maybe take that and build that as an initiative, not just in Sydney, but wherever I can, like basically nationally, for anybody that's struggling, I guess. That's kind of where I'm at. So I just went on the radio to talk about, because I released that album on Friday. So I just went on the radio then to talk about my album and the campaign. I'm going on radio again this Friday to do that. And then we're going to try and push some media and those sorts of things in some different ways. Just try and get a little bit of exposure. Apparently I need to go and apply for fundraising, be a fundraiser through government as well. I don't know if you guys have to do that sort of thing. But people are just reaching out to me randomly. Some guy reached out to me today and said, hey, I've got experience in non-for-profits. These are the things you need to do. Don't try and don't try and be a charity if you can help it. If you can rely, he actually said if you can rely on fundraising alone, just stay there. Because he goes, there's so much red tape when you become an actual organisation or a non-for-profit, so to speak, that you don't really want to do that. So that was quite interesting as well. So maybe just try and stay as a grassroots movement through and create a community, but don't go to that next stage of an actual organisation. Don't know.
Yeah. So, first of all, congratulations, because it sounds like you're doing amazing stuff.
Brilliant, brilliant.
And well done for setting up the campaign. Can you tell anybody that might be watching this video what your campaign actually is and where the link is and what it's for, please?
Yeah, so it's possible. It's a possible campaign. And I think if you just went on there and wrote leg up, but anybody who's watching this, let's have a look. So it's possible.com/project/leg up helping others with hyphens in between it.
Okay, so Possible's a crowdfunding platform in Oz.
What's that?
Possible, like a crowdfunding platform.
Yeah, basically a crowdfunding platform. I don't know if it's Australian. I think it's Australian based.
Australia.
Australia.
I can see it. Can you sit up or put the camera down? Because we can only see the top of your head. Ooh.
There you go.
And just to put it in context as well, so you talked about an album. Ben might not know.
That better?
Yeah. Oh, we can see Scott.
Oh, great.
Study, yeah. Yeah. Can you tell us what your album is and what you do?
Yeah, I'm an MC. So I rap to, well, this is the third hip hop album I've released. But it's probably about the fifth or sixth album that I've released throughout my musical time, I guess. But I'm an MC everything from hip hop, reggae, drum and bass, grime, garage, breaks, and I don't know if there's anything else in between. I'll probably do that as well. So yeah.
The album's been on my playlist on Spotify, and I've been listening to it. And sometimes I'm going along and there's some shuffle, and I'm walking around, and I'm like, "Oh, there's Scotty in Oz." It's quite
You like it?
Yeah, I love it. I really enjoy it. I hate hip. Like, it's hard to please me with music, right? Because there's a certain caliber and a certain, I don't know, you get certain things on a pedestal from your past, and then it's hard to take those bubbles. And it was fun to listen to because the different samples and sounds and the beats and your intonation and your flow is different.
Yeah.
And yeah, I liked it. Really, really liked it. I tell people if I don't like stuff straight up, because you're not going to gain anything if I'm just lying and chatting rubbish.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's good.
Yeah, I loved it. It's ace. So what's the album called?
Staircases.
Put this on to silent. Staircases. And was that prompted by anything to do with your experiences?
I wrote that album when I broke up with my ex-fiance, actually. So it's a bit of it's an up and down road. And I guess I went pretty, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's the happiest album, but it's not the darkest. I think the album before that was maybe even darker. So I don't know. It's just music, I guess. But yeah, written at a time. I don't think I'd probably write that record again, but it's nice to have it. I like it. So
it's really cool how you're using that to harness momentum towards the Leg Up project, and I like the way you've coincided the two things and you're using your media presence to...
Yeah, it's cool, and it's good to, like, you can go and talk about an album, but it's nice to go and sort of spruik this as well. I've got just as much passion to try and get this moving as I do for anybody listening to my records, you know what I mean? So hopefully we can just continue on that path. Yeah,
that's amazing. So the reason I got Ben on this call, and the reason that I wanted to connect you guys, is because Ben has been working tirelessly and very impactfully in the homeless community in Birmingham, and he's somebody that's made me think a lot about what I do, and has helped me to consider people, actions, and I now see things from a different lens because of his experiences. And I thought it'd be valuable if we could connect and try and learn from each other and help each other to go to the next stage. So Ben, you've been on this path for a few years, haven't you? Can you explain how Let's Feed Brum came about, and then maybe talk about maybe magical gifts that you can offer to mentor us and guide us with your wisdom, Gandalf?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of resonance I've got with Scott. You know, when you see people in situations where they're struggling, you know, I think that humanity in you kind of, it touches that, and you think, you know what, I think I'm in a position where I can help a bit. And if you can, then you kind of, you know, you just, the first thing you do is just step out. And, you know, I did very similar to you, just got to know some of the people that were on the street. And then kind of, you don't really know what you're doing to begin with, and you don't even know what the problems are, and how to figure out how to make a difference. But you do, I think, have to spend some time out there getting to know people and getting to hear the stories. And I'll follow on from a couple of things that you said, Scott. I mean, first of all, I've got to say, amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what you're doing, and the fact that you are stepping out and doing it and trying to create some kind of momentum around it. I mean, I really, you know, big up to you, and I applaud you for that, because that in itself is a rare thing. Most people just walk on by, you know. And, you know, I have to confess, for many, many years, I just walked on by, you know, for lots of various reasons. I mean, the main reason I think for people is fear, because they kind of know deep down that this requires action, but they're afraid of the action that they have to take, because you know that on some level you're going to have to work or make a sacrifice that maybe you're not prepared to. And I think that's one of the things that we can debunk as being involved in this kind of thing, is actually it's an incredibly rewarding thing to do. And when you do stuff where you're reaching out to people, I mean, you'll be surprised at how much comes back to you. In fact, more comes back to you than you give out. The truth is that, you know, in terms of what you experience and how, and the gratitude and ingratitude, it doesn't really matter, to be honest. It's not, you don't do it for thanks. You do it because you recognize that something needs to be done, and you just step out along that road. So
definitely.
one of the things that I wanted to say to you, because you raised up some specific issues that, you know, people have been mentioning stuff to you about, and I get that thing about if you're working with organizations, they need some kind of regularity, and that can be difficult sometimes, you know, if you've got a busy lifestyle. But one of the things that I found very early on, there were a couple of guys who I encountered who were just two of them really doing similar to what I was doing. And they were struggling to keep up with a regular weekly. They used to go out regular weekly on a Tuesday evening. And I used to just go out at different times and when it suited me. But it wasn't a big organization. It was just a couple of lads. And so I kind of tagged along with them. They've been doing it for quite a few years already. And then after about tagging along with them for about 6 months, they specifically wanted to target coming out on Saturday and Sunday early mornings. So they said to me, do you mind just handling the Tuesday evenings and just kind of running with it as it, you know, wherever it went? Now, so I said, yeah, that's fine. So they started going early morning, Saturday, Sunday. And I just maintained the Tuesday evenings. Now, the beauty of one regular outreach, and we'd go to the same spot, stand there for about half an hour to an hour, and then we'd walk around the city with all our supplies and see who we could find. The beauty about that is that when you're at a regular place at a regular time in the city centre, lots of people see you. So we began to get people coming to us and saying, can we help? So that little group, which was literally two of us, over a period of about 2 to 3 years, became about 15 people.
Yeah, cool.
And then that also went from 1 night to 2 nights to 3 nights to 4 nights. So because there's a lot of you, you can organize it, because it means, you know, not one person has to be out every night, and between you organize who's making the drinks, who's getting the food, and you know, who's getting the supplies, and you go out there. And it's not very costly to do that, you know. People would start donating stuff to us, sleeping bags, etc., clothing. So we always had stuff to give out. But it's always worth remembering that the stuff you give out is secondary to the main thing that you're giving people out there, and that's time and attention, care, and the word I like to use is love, actually, because I think when you give somebody time and attention, you are loving them, you know. I mean, and that's one thing we've got to recognize. You know, English is quite a poor language to talk about love, but love is not just the emotion, right? It's not just simply an emotion. Of course it is, but it's not just an emotion. Love is actually an action.
Yeah.
What you do rather than what you feel. And you know, any any of us that's been in relationships will understand that, or in a relationship, because sometimes you do what the right thing is to do, but you're not feeling good about it, you know. And so you've got to make that distinction between love as an action and love as an emotion. And I think when you give somebody time and a listening ear, you are loving that person, you know. And and you can't do it if you're not genuine, if you don't sincerely want to. I mean, you can't fake it. You either care or you don't. And
exactly.
and the person on the street, they know when you're sincere, and it's important to be sincere. I mean, if it's not you, don't do it, you know. There could be something else that is for you to do. But the thing that I wanted to lead into, to kind of progress from that thought of, you've got a group going, you're regularly doing lots of things, and during that time, pretty much everyone was a volunteer, had established relationships with 3, 4, 5 people on the street, and we would become like that go-to person. They could come and talk to us, and I began to find out what the city was doing and the kind of services that were available in the city and the resources the city had. But it didn't take long for me to realise, well, 1 or 2 years down the road, when a lot of the services I was signposting people to, and people were coming back and saying, actually, they didn't really help me much. You know, in fact, they did a bit, but it wasn't enough, or it wasn't the right kind of thing. And I realised that what was going on, certainly in our city, was what we call the revolving door. So you go in through the offices, you go into the services, and they had 1 or 2 outreach services, but actually they had a very limited amount of options they could offer people on the street. And maybe 70% of the time, none of those options were really suitable. And people dipped into it and came back out on the street. So it was at that time that we started to talk about maybe providing a service ourselves. What could we do? What if we had somewhere we could take people back to? You know, what if we had some kind of wraparound support for people that were in that situation? And those conversations over a period of a few years became, let's open a night shelter. And that happened about 2 years ago. We opened a night shelter in an area fairly close to the city centre, and to this day, it's still Birmingham's only permanent night shelter. You would think that there were more than one, but it is the only one. Now, also about 2 years ago, the street organisation, we set up a different organisation to open the night shelter. And we worked under the umbrella of an existing charity. So we didn't have to set up a charity. They did all our back office work, the admin, and, you know, we obviously did fundraising, and we did a kind of mutual agreement in terms of they organised that side of it and we run the project. But at the same time, the street outreach organisation, we'd grown by that time, 2 years ago, just about 2.5 years ago, to about 70 to 80 volunteers operating 6 nights a week. And some of those volunteers were people who were working in big organizations in the city. So some of them had their own businesses. And so they approached me and said, why don't we set this up as a charity? And then, you know, what you'd heard from some of your guys' advice is probably quite correct in certain ways, because there are pitfalls, but there are also advantages.
Yeah.
Now, the beauty of being just grassroots is that you don't have to comply with anything. Basically, you can go on the fly, out on a wing and a prayer. You can make decisions out there, and you can react to situations without having to worry about what are the consequences for the organisation. And so that was something I was concerned about. If we become a charity, how does that affect our ability to do what needs to be done on the night when you're out there on the street? Are we going to have to think through all kinds of stuff before we can do anything?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, the pros of it are you're registered as a charity. It makes a massive difference in terms of fundraising, because
definitely, because it's tax deductible.
It's not really that. It's credibility more than anything.
Yeah.
Because when you're registered as a charity, people will start to take you seriously. When you're just a group going around doing stuff, there's always that thought of, well, are they doing things properly? Do they know what they're doing? And certainly big organizations won't want to contribute. Individuals will, but big organizations might start thinking, no, well, we've got to think about how we look if we support this organization. Now, anyway, we went down the road. I thought, let's give it a go. It is a painful process. It took us about over a year to get everything done, to get it sorted. We were very fortunate that one of the trustees actually had close links with a law firm.
I was about to ask, did you have any sort of in-house lawyers or anybody that you knew?
Pretty much. And they saved us a lot of money. The work that they did completely free for us would probably have cost several grand for them to do what they did. So yeah, you will. It's costly unless you've got people who can do that. Now, fortunately, we have people that could do that. But what I wanted to say, though, is that we are a registered charity, but actually the actual soup kitchen street outreach hasn't changed a lot in terms of the fact that people turn up on the night, and we also are welcoming of other groups and individuals, so they don't have to wear our badge, right? And so in a way, it's a little bit weird but our soup kitchen is a little bit like it's like a platform for anyone that wants to come and help. So other organizations can come, individuals can come, and there's a kind of loose network now of different organizations that just try and support each other. So it's not that corporate, to be honest, and it does allow us a lot of flexibility. And we have our kind of charity, Let's Feed Brum, and we'll have lanyards and we have our setup. But somebody can come along with some sandwiches they made at home, and they can stand a few feet away from us. We'll even lend them a table, and they can hand stuff out. And and one bit there's tea and coffee being handed out. So actually, I think at the moment we've got the best of both worlds. But the reason for that is because on the street there is really nobody out there making sure that everybody is compliant with everything they're supposed to be compliant with. And partly because it's impossible to police, and all the statutory organisations, the local authority and central government, they know that the minute, particularly the council, if they start trying to stop people out on the street helping people who are homeless or rough sleeping, it will look so bad on them. They don't dare do it, really. So
they do it here. They do it here. They do it here quite in a big way. They try and rehome them, but before they rehome them, sometimes they kicked a whole heap of people out of this. It was just under a bridge. It wasn't even that bad. They were it's not like you just had vagrants everywhere or anything like that. People were just set up in tents. Some of these people were going to work and doing all sorts of stuff, were living under a bridge and tent, and they actually kicked everybody out and then put security guards there for 2 security guards 24/7, which would have cost that community so much money. Then they like it was just ridiculous what they did. You know what I mean? And they had
Yeah,
these security guards there for like 2 or 3 months. On like, you know, if you look at what a security guard gets paid, work it out times 2, you know, times 24 hours a day, times 3 months, and then look at that bill. Like, was that really worth it? Ridiculous.
No. I mean, that kind of thing. You know, they don't like to see tents out there. One of the things I'd say about that is, in Sydney generally, what's the feeling that people have about rough sleepers and people out on the streets?
Yeah, I was going to ask that actually. I was going to ask Scotty if you could paint a picture, because I went to Sydney, as you know, in like 2008-9, and yeah, there were people on doorways and stuff like anywhere, but the world's changed.
Yeah.
Can you paint?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Well, I guess it's the same old thing, isn't it? You've got your people with the right-wing agenda, the left want to help, and the centralists sort of just sit on the fence. I think it's kind of similar, like wherever you are. I think in England, I think Melbourne, like, look, it's cold in Sydney at the moment. There's a lot of homeless people. We went out last Wednesday. We couldn't feed them all. You know what I mean? We didn't have enough food. Like, so I think what I'm seeing now, though, is I swear people are like homeless because they're just homeless. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Well, the thing that I've tried to focus on is about being effective in actually providing options for people. So if the local authority isn't doing it, if central government is not rolling out resources, there's no point banging on their doors, because they're not going to change. You know, the responsibilities that government and local authority have, they're only going to do, you know, a phrase that I use is, they're going to do slightly less than the bare minimum, and that's it. They're not going to do any more than that. They're just going to fulfill what they consider their responsibilities are and try and get away with less than that. So actually, it's about mobilizing people in the local community.
yeah.
And what I have found is that those corporate entities, actually, there's a lot of people in those organizations that want to help, and they've got resources. You know, in England, in Britain now, we've got what they call corporate social responsibility, where those organizations are being told, you have to make some kind of contribution to positive action within the local community.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think, like, no, I completely agree that there's a lot of organizations donating to charity. Like, there's people in pubs tonight, like a pub that I go to, they're sleeping on the street in Newtown tonight to show, you know what I mean? And that's it's not just one pub. They own about 5 pubs. You know, they're quite wealthy. Yeah. So you're seeing a lot more of this sort of thing. There's the CEO sleep outs. I don't know if you guys have that sort of thing there.
Yeah. And it's about providing actual solutions, which is why the night shelter was essential, because we needed a place where we could take people to and give them the support that we want. Now, we're nearly 2 years old, that night shelter, and one of the things that we've managed to achieve there is a very high rate of getting people back into employment and getting back on track.
Yeah.
The system in England is, you've got hostels that are reliant upon the people on the street signing up to social welfare and getting the social welfare to pay their rents. So
right.
which the hostels are using as their revenue stream for keeping themselves going and paying their staff.
Right.
So what we've done at our shelters, we don't take anything off the guys coming in off the street. I mean, we give them a bed, we give them food, we give them everything they need. We don't charge them a cent for the service. We give them a mentor and a caseworker who can help them to do all the basic stuff, get their ID sorted, get a bank account up and running. If they've got issues around addiction, talk about, you know, what are the ways we can approach this. If they've got, if they can't work for whatever reason, then maybe they need to sign up to social welfare. We need to get you on that right track and then get you down that road. What kind of work have you done before? You know, okay, you were a chef before, or you were a forklift truck driver. All right, let's get your qualifications up to date. Let's get you some work trials. And what we found, I mean, in Birmingham, is that literally 1 in 3 people that come in through that shelter within 3 or 4 months are in full-time work and able to sustain themselves, and we help them find accommodation, and off they go. We stop that revolving door. We have to give a lot of time and effort into it, but obviously what you're doing is you're enabling somebody to get back on track and sustain themselves, and then be a productive part of the city and the society, and you know, their own lives. You know, I've got so many examples in my mind, you know, of guys who've, you know, broken up with their missus, ended up on the street for a year or two, got themselves back on track, back in touch now with their kids, seeing their kids, working, having access to their kids. And it's just about, you've got to have a solution. If the solution's not there in the city around Sydney, if there aren't options for people to come away from the street, move on, get the help they want, then nothing will change.
What would the solution look like? I think maybe that's something that could be similar to what we have in Birmingham. Maybe it's not, but I think at least if we're talking and having a discussion between us, you know, what I want to do is try and help Scotty to skip stages that are pitfalls that he could have avoided, because it doesn't need to be burning out and spending loads of his own money and time. I'd like us, Ben and Scotty, to help through communicating with each other and working out what stages you do really have to go to, because obviously going out there, meeting people, talking about what's happening is invaluable. You can't skip that stage, because like you'll learn what the services are doing and how the city adapts, where maybe, you know, there might be another way of feeling. But I
think it's a valuable point. I might have to wrap up this call because I've got to go and meet someone for dinner. I do apologise. It's just
no problem.
It's getting late. We could do another one next week. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
It might be interesting. But I think some of the things that's quite interesting of what you said is maybe for us to sort of do a bit of research, look around what's going on. Like, and I know when I've gone out to feed people and stuff that there's been people there already, but like, you know, and there is services and there's people doing those things. So maybe it's even looking at that point of difference of what else is going on. See if it's a closed thing more so, or if it is like the homeless shelter is interesting because they closed down a big homeless shelter. There is a way. So there's a couple of different places as well still going, but I don't think there's beds for everyone. There definitely isn't. And there's not, you know, so. And the other thing is what I want to get into is the mentoring side of it. Like, because I work in a decent role and half intelligent at the same time and sort of quite good at driving people to do those sorts of things. It'd be interesting to see what employment services are out there for people, not job centres, so to speak, but what do homeless people do who are trying to get off the street and go for work and those sorts of things, you know what I mean? But, it's been really good. I do apologise. I have to cut it short. I guess I kind of looked at 6:30 and now it's 10 to 8. I've just got someone messaging me going.
No problem. Well, I'll finish with one thing for you, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll finish with this point. You said earlier that you needed, you know, you couldn't do stuff because obviously you don't have time and one person can only do so much. Yeah. And that is absolutely true. The projects that I've been involved with here that have moved forward, you really need to get a group of, I would say, about half a dozen people who are like-minded, have the same passion, 4 to 6 people, and start with a regularly meeting together once a month. And commit to that meeting to talk about what's going on and what we're going to do about it. Now, the shelter started like that, and I'll tell you, it took 2 years before we formulated a plan and another year before we put it into operation. But what was consistent was that group of people met together every month and thought, these are the issues, we want to do something about it, and everyone pulled together to make it happen. You can't do it on your own. I mean, with the best will in the world, you'll just burn out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've got some people that have come on board. I've got a guy in Melbourne that wants to do it in Melbourne. So, you know, it's about gaining, and I think the gaining the capital things maybe just to get a bit of awareness. We might not even get what we want, so therefore we don't get anything. But at least people then know the name out there a bit more. And if anything, that's a good thing. You know what I mean? So. Yeah, let's organise another call. You're going to Boomtown, kids, so you're going to be like out of action until like Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Well done. I actually went out last night to my mate's birthday and had like 6 pints.
That's all right.
Yeah, I was up till very late last night. But anyway, so just to end, wrapping up. So one of the key things that you might need help with is looking at legal structures and advice. So if anyone's watching this and they might have any understanding of how law in charity and non-profit works, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Possible link was possible, and then look up Leg Up, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Leg Up, Help Others.
And then your MC name for the album, search on Spotify.
Undertow. It's Undertow and OT. So it's a joint album with a producer, and then all the albums feature a DJ as well. So it's really like 3 people coming together to make some music.
Called Staircases. So chuck some crowdfunding money if you can Scotty's way. And if anybody is in Oz, anyone travelling around from the UK, hello. And also, can you chip in? Give him a bit of or whatever. All right. Big ups and congratulations. Thanks, Ben, for your time. It's been
great.
Yeah, thanks heaps, Ben. Let's catch up soon and have another chat.
All right.
Great to meet you, Scott. All the best. Great
stuff.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.